Hey there, my name is Mennonite.
And my name's Big Nose.
Today we're going to be doing another wonderful, fantastic interview. However, full disclaimer, today it's going to be about some serious topics. That being said, we always maintain that even during disagreements, you can still maintain friendships.
Exactly. However, just to double remind everyone, this is going to be about a little bit more of a serious topic. So please keep that in mind and please take care of your mental health.
Hi, welcome back to the Discourse Bar. My name is Mennonite, and I am joined again with Big Nose and KanoaDaddy. If you watched the last video, you can understand where to find KanoaDaddy, whether it be twitch.tv/KanoaDaddy, youtube.com/KanoaDaddy, or his Instagram or TikTok, all are KanoaDaddy. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, KanoaDaddy.
Yeah. That last video was also on sexuality, so check that out if you haven't yet. My name is KanoaDaddy, Twitch streamer, general fuck entrepreneur. There we go. That's decent. Shitty elf fuck for days.
He is a shitty elf fuck. Trust me, I've visited him.
That's about it.
All right. So like the intro has explained, this is going to be more, not super serious, but more of a serious style conversation.
Right.
Again, if you don't feel like your mental health could deal with these conversations, by all means, feel free to click away. Nobody's going to, hate you for it. Nobody's going to talk shit. If you can't handle the conversations, please, by all means, step away. I would rather have you watch a more lighthearted video than this one. That being said, let's go ahead and jump on into it. So the overall topic of this segment is the state of the country. More specifically, the state of 2020. I should have called it. But hey, that's what we're sticking with. So state of the country. So yeah. So over the course of 2020, we've been dealing with, COVID-19, coronavirus, or if you're our wonderful president, we call it the China virus. However you feel about that.
China.
So my first question is, in your opinion, Kanoa, how well do you think the federal and state governments have responded to COVID-19 initially, back in February and January, versus how do you think they're dealing with it nowadays? If you even have an opinion on how it's going nowadays.
I do, actually. So obviously initial response was ass garbage. I think that much is clear. Literally, most people didn't even think it was a real thing.
Yeah.
More people had it than was being let on. Testing was grossly underdone in the initial stages, and that's where it got its foothold. And not shutting down immediately, not making masks, that just general social distancing at all is why the United States is still rampant, and why other countries have cut the curve down to damn near nothing, and are in the process of eliminating it from their borders.
Mm-hmm.
Provided the United States is a very large place, I understand that. I understand there's conditions that are different than a smaller European country, but man, come on.
Oh, I have definitely felt that there have been flagrant misuses or misdiagnosis on all facets of the government. It's just one
Today
of those things.
is slightly better. I got a notification on my phone of an executive order in Michigan saying that stores are now required to have masks or they must deny you entry. And the like. If you're out in public, basically, you need to be wearing a mask.
I can tell you the city I'm in says that if you're not wearing a mask in public, you have to wear a mask when you're out in town. Otherwise, there's a possibility of being fined for it.
But yeah. And I'm glad they're doing fines, because at first they were just throwing people in jail with other people who weren't wearing masks, and it was just spreading that way. And I was like, what's your fucking logic?
Right. Oh, and then that caused issues with those protests, the lockdown protests, because they're all mad that they were getting jailed
That's
for not
right.
wearing the mask because,
God, that
like,
sounds like 1,000 years ago now at this point.
right? That was in March, and
It's only July, man. It's only July.
2020 is the decade.
Yeah. I don't know how this year has felt longer than the rest of my life, but
right. So that kind of leads me into my second line of questioning about COVID-19. We have noticed this distinct trend almost, and it's a little bit too early to tell exactly what's going on, but we have noticed, at least on our end here on the Discourse Bar and through our own research, is that the number of cases have been increasing almost to an exponential level. However, deaths and hospitalizations seem to be plummeting, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on why that potentially is? Do you even think that it'll also reverse and deaths and hospitalizations will ramp back up?
okay. So, provided I've not seen this data myself, if I might make an extrapolation based on the graph I just saw in my head from what you're saying, purely speculatively, this could be because deaths are easy to track, and the amount of testing has increased. People are actually coming for it now instead of just staying home and hoping for the best. People are realizing that it's a little more serious. You're still going to get just as many deaths as things go, and deaths going down is good.
Yes.
In all cases, deaths going down is good. As long as all information is being reported accurately, that's a win, baby. But if more people are going to get it and there's still not a cure, there's sit on a respirator and let it work itself out,
Right.
basically, as a cure right now. Which is horrifically invasive and awful for everyone involved.
Yeah, ventilators are horrible from what I understand.
Yeah, you'll lose like 40% of your muscle mass or something like that over 2 weeks if you're young enough to survive it. Which is why a lot of the older, less healthy individuals will just not make it through being on the ventilator. The only thing I can think is there's more reporting going on. This is clearly a non-related statistics if deaths are going down but cases are going up.
So basically what you're saying...
Those can't be correlated,
Right.
Yeah, so what you're saying is because they're actually testing people and people are realizing, hey, this is actually serious, and they're coming forward and they're getting tested, we're actually finding a good majority of the cases that we have in the country, but the actual death statistic, while it is going down, hasn't really changed all that much.
Because it's going to be specific. It's easier to see a dead person than someone with COVID.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they've stopped actually labeling the people who died in car accidents who just so happened to have COVID as a COVID death.
Well, if it was already misrepresented data to start with, cutting misrepresented data that's inflating a statistic is, of course, going to result in that statistic going down. So that's again a good thing. Misrepresentation of data is shitty.
Based on those two key
I
factors,
personally don't know enough, but I have enough fucking logic to understand that misrepresentation. It seems like these numbers are hard to take seriously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's been misrepresentation and testing wasn't in proper development for far too long, and fuck me, still might not be. I don't know personally.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to change my question. I'm going off script a little bit because we actually have some good news for once.
Fuck me. This is a roller coaster.
I know, right? Recently, there was a trial of a coronavirus vaccine. They tested on 45 people, and thus far, from what I've been able to see, there hasn't been any majorly negative responses to the vaccine yet. Currently, there's like 35,000 people that are enrolled to get this test, as long as, again, none of the 45 initial people have any kind of negative reactions. So,
Right.
thoughts on that? Happy to see that?
Happy to see that. I actually used to do trial testing for safe drugs. They were in their first phase. It wasn't their first times they were ever being used on people in most cases. So there was a bit of security going into it that unless you had very benign affliction, it wouldn't react strangely. So I would go in and test drugs, basically. The risk that you take with something like this, with testing a drug, especially one that could end up being widespread to tens, hundreds of thousands of people potentially, is that if it does have effects later in life that we cannot foresee currently, you are damning those people to all undergo that thing. Like, say it shuts your liver down in about a year's time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that got it from that point is going to have to then suffer from a liver shutdown instead of the coronavirus, which I don't know if the vaccine's a permanent fix or if it just gets rid of it out of your body in that one instance. And then if you catch it again, you'll have to like get the vaccine again.
Well,
COVID is catchable multiple times.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just like the flu is catchable multiple times. The way I understand how the virus works is, I'm not going to say the same because obviously coronavirus is different from the flu, but
Certainly.
The vaccine definitely works a lot like the flu vaccine. It boosts your immune system to where you can help fight off the virus if you actually do come in contact with it, which is really where, vaccines come into play with these kind of widespread diseases that happen year to year. So
that's an interesting. So again, I don't know how the vaccine works. I have done a good bit of research on how COVID works by itself, how COVID works, which is to when it gets in your respiratory system, it begins inflicting cells, copying its DNA. It bursts out of the cells with more of them. They inflict more cells, and go on until your body realizes that happens. Yeah, when your body realizes that happens, your white blood cells come in to basically bomb that shit. They'll do what they can to destroy inflicted cells. The problem is that the virus then starts also inflicting white blood cells, which then go basically haywire and start hitting everything around them. Everything. Healthy cells, infected cells. That's where it starts to get nasty. Is your body is basically turned against you, and that your defenses are shooting wild. So a boost to your immune system, if that is the case, could technically result in just a quicker death. That's strangely enough. Again, I don't know how the vaccine works. I only know several articles and a few videos worth of how COVID works, and that could be old information by this point. That was a solid month and a half or 2 months prior to now, which is in July. So that could be misinformation at this point as well. I don't want to try to stand by info that I'm not 100% on. It's good to see a vaccine. It's not good to not know when that vaccine will be either safe, or the longer you hold on to it, the more people still have to go undergo COVID. So that's the trick, is the longer they test the vaccine, the longer people have to deal with COVID. But the faster they use the vaccine, the more risks are associated with that vaccine in the future.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the more ads we'll see in 20 years where it's like, did you get the COVID vaccine back in 2020? You may be entitled to compensation.
If this turns into the mesothelioma ad.
Which really sucks because...
It does.
Because that's discouraging people from finding vaccines. That's the kind of shit that makes people not want to make a vaccine, too.
Right.
Yeah.
No one wants to be responsible for
that. All right. So kind of staying along with the state of the country, back in the later end of May, the United States was struck with a tragic event. Again, the murder of George Floyd happened, and a whole bunch of other questionable police shootings happened. And obviously there was a upsurge of BLM protests, what are some of your thoughts and opinions on the events that led up to the outbursts of all the protests happening across the country? More along the lines of what kind of change do you think we need to that needs to happen in the country because of this?
Okay. So focus on what change needs to happen, or focus on the events that we got for now.
If you have events on the, if you have opinions on the events that have led up to it, or if you want to focus on the changes that need to happen, it's your deal. If you want to talk about it.
As far as events leading up, and as a non-person of color, you gotta take this as someone looking into it.
Right.
There have been institutional shitty things that basically say, hey, drug charges, mass incarceration, many a sort of over-policing of colored neighborhood of any kind. You know, it's not even specifically just black neighborhoods, just over-policing of Latino neighborhoods, even everything. These things were things that are pretty objectively wrong. I think we can all agree is objectively wrong to treat people that way first. But they weren't able to be stood out against because, as I'm sure you guys know, even last year, there were 1,000 protests for 1,000 different things going on, and it didn't seem like anyone could focus on one thing long enough to make a difference. We have been fortunate enough that the Black Lives Matter, which has been going on for forever. I remember seeing Black Lives Matter protests at my college in like 2012.
Right.
This has been a thing for a very long time, and I'm glad that it's finally caught its footing. These events that led up to it, the shootings, the over-policing, the police brutality, just finally sparked and brought attention to the larger issue. And to me, from what I observe and from what I can understand, that is what this is about. It is not about defending George Floyd as a person.
Right.
George Floyd as a person could have done heinous, awful things in their life and been guilty in the situation, even though they weren't. And it would not have changed the fact that were he just some white dude doing all those things, he probably wouldn't have gotten shot or kneeled on and suffocated. There's another case I was thinking. Apologies.
You're fine.
The purpose overall is that we're trying to change built-in issues and discrepancies, the difference in how people are treated based on area and whatnot, because these people died and brought attention to it.
Right. And like I can say, again, I did 11 and a half months, corrections, and I've been trained in restraining tactics, and the knee hold is a legitimate way of restraining, but you hold it for 30 seconds. So you we were trained the minimum amount of force necessary to control the situation. Basically meaning I will not utilize force any more so than I have to just maintain the safety of not just me and my fellow officers, but of the inmate or the suspect or whatever you're talking about. It's the use of force guidelines are there so that as many people can stay as safe as possible. And so that was one thing that I was watching the George Floyd video, and I was like, that is, like, I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, he needs to get that knee off. They need to turn him to his side. Like, you don't do that. So whether or not, this was a racist event, where it's like a white cop went out and his sole purpose to go kill a black guy, or if it was just a instance of, an abuse of power, had nothing to do with racism, that was still an issue. That was still an abuse of authority, whether it had a racism issue or not. Like, I still take issue with that. And I think a lot of the issues that have come about as far as like the over policing and the no-knock warrants that ended up getting Breonna Taylor killed, all of that stemmed from the 1994 crime bill And I've been a huge advocate for that bill to be just completely eradicated and thrown out. Because that was a bill built on the Reagan era policing efforts, like the war on drugs, which again,
That is a problem.
I hate that as well. And
Yes.
I was law enforcement at one point, so yeah. Because like I said, you do see a more increase in incarcerations because of the war on crime, or not the war on crime. Well, war on crime being the '94 crime bill, and because of the war on drugs being the Reagan era. I definitely think that was one of Reagan's worst policies he put into place. That being said, I don't personally like drug use because I think it's going to kill you if you keep on utilizing drugs in a negative manner. But
right.
I think that if the United States treats it more of like a crime instead of a mental health issue, it's definitely going to lead to way more people utilizing drugs and in an unsafe manner. So, just my 2 cents on the matter.
Specifically on drugs and drug use, I don't recall the country. This was something that was brought up in an old psychology or sociology class of mine in college. Was that there was a country or two that completely eradicated the drug laws in their country, and you would think going out and shooting up heroin is legal. There's going to be people who are like, fuck yeah, I'm going to go shoot some heroin. They changed all of that funding over to helping people rehabilitate publicly. Rehabilitation was public. They initially saw a spike in drug use, followed by a massive decrease overall in drug use.
Yeah, personally, I'm an advocate for making all drugs legal.
Yeah.
And the reason being, either you're going to realize you have a problem and go get help, or you're going to kill yourself in terms of actually using the drugs. Either way, and I'm not saying that it's going to be a good thing if the user dies, but either way, there's one less junkie. Either way, to put it bluntly.
All right, I know that it just sounded so. Yeah, it's remarkably insensitive sounding, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, to put it bluntly, that's what's going to happen. It's not going to be a good thing overall, but you're going to see less people doing these drugs in a very unsafe manner. You're going to see a lot of less people going in and spiking the already dangerous drugs with even more dangerous chemicals and selling them to them. And that's the only way you can get it. Because if you have a shop on the side of the street that will sell it to you and say, hey, you have to sign a waiver and say, we have no connection to you having any illness or any physical ailment because of this. If you can just buy it off the corner, the shop on the corner,
the underground drug trade dies.
Exactly.
Drug cartels die. There's
nothing running from Mexico and China and, as far as I know, even Canada it's gone.
Yeah, again, I grew up in Amarillo, Texas. It is, I want to say it was number one, or it still is number one in drug trafficking across the entire United States, because the two main highway systems that lead from coast to coast and border to border run straight through Amarillo, Texas. So there is a huge drug trafficking problem that happens in Amarillo. And kind of piggybacking off of what Big Nose was saying, the key to, if you switch more of going to decriminalizing drugs and more into focusing on the mental health, is how do we get to as many people that, again, to put it bluntly, will kill themselves utilizing drugs. If we decriminalize it and focus on the mental health aspect, we could reach way more people than we already do and help them. So maybe, within the first 5 years, we might have, 20 deaths, from overusage, but eventually we can get to the point where we have 0 deaths due to overdoses. So that would be a goal. That would be a definite goal.
That's the logic behind drug laws, right?
Yeah.
The people who are doing drugs and or are caught with drugs obviously aren't being stopped because of the laws.
Right.
I don't have drugs not because I'm afraid of the law, because I'm uninterested in them.
Right.
Most people, I would say, who are interested in drugs will get their hands on those drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge mental
There's
aspect.
more than enough availability. Yeah.
Oh, plenty
There's a
of it.
huge mental health aspect behind it of like, it's illegal. It's a fun thing to do. Like, think back before you were 21, right? I mean, I remember before I was 21, I drank a lot more than I do now. And it's because, it wasn't necessarily legal for me to do so. And it was like, oh, I'm going to go like fight the system and be all cool and radical and, go drink underage. And then as soon as I hit 21, I'm just like, yeah, I'll have a beer every now and again. Whatever. Like,
It's something I'm allowed to do now.
Yeah,
not
I
as
think like
fun to
6
do.
or 7. Your mom says you can't be up past 10 and you're not supposed to be watching such and such TV channel. What are you going to do? You're going to get out of bed at midnight, go downstairs and turn on the TV.
I think these issues all come down to a simple matter of, first, people are kind of dumb. People are selfish. People are self-serving. And when you put that in the concept of private prisons, you put that in people who make the laws, legislators, the people enforcing those laws, police officers, everyone at the end of the day is first off not trying to get fucked over,
Right.
and is second off trying to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And on a minor level, police officers band together to not get shit on, basically, with good reason. I understand, like, there's a very solid like sense of, hey, I don't want to get fucked over and have my life's work eradicated. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And then legislators are making laws that generate funds for the private prisons, and private prisons are then paying legislators to put in for case these laws. You're caught yourself in this cycle of when this kind of lobbying and when these kinds of legislative policies are allowed to be put forth, because people only ever focus on the goddamn president anyways, and that can bring us into a whole fucking political mess of how a two-party system's garbage. But you end up with, and I'm not trying to hit buzzwords here, but like late-stage capitalism, man. It's all about who's got the money. It's about what corporation can pay off to have their interests brought into legal fruition.
Right.
And that sucks. That fucking sucks, because everyone who isn't that corporation is getting fucked on without even realizing they're getting fucked on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and lead into the next question, where it's based on all of those things that you just said, which ultimately are the causes for the foothold for the BLM, the Black Lives Matter movement. Why do you think that individuals in the peaceful protests for the Black Lives Matter movement felt the need to start riots across the country?
And I recognize the, not necessarily irony, but again, we're 3 white guys talking about this. I get that.
Right.
Yeah, and
that's not lost
opinion.
on me.
Like listening, trying to understand it from other people's point of view, like that.
And again, mind you, I didn't want to write this question. I did not want to write this question. Nate will testify to that.
We did not want to write the question, but it's a question that needs to be asked.
It definitely needs to be asked.
So just a quick nod off right now that while I'm sure there are plenty of BLM protesters that did partake in riots or start the riots that have gone on across the country, there is also video evidence of police officers causing property damage well before any riots started. Convenient placements in the city of weaponry and things that could be used to break windows, stacks of bricks, for example, that are just placed around non-construction sites. Convenient placements that could be interpreted as inciting riots. on the part of either police, the state, whoever has an interest in those riots happening. But at the same time, while there's that whole side of it, there are certainly outsiders, people who just showed up for riots, and BLM supporters who took place and acted in those riots. And I think that comes from a place of frustration. Obviously, I don't think any of us can sit down and say, like, hey, it's objectively right to ruin small businesses. That's not. I think most people seeing this would be like, hey, wow, fucking up that mom and pop business really didn't help anyone, did it? Do you feel better, you asshole?
Right.
And that's what people will focus on, is the you asshole part.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, fail to see that these people who are behaving this way have just been constantly fucking shafted their whole lives. And just breaking one thing to say, fuck you, police, you can't stop me.
It's extremely cathartic.
It's a statement. It is making a statement that civil discourse will continue until legislation is put in place that stops fucking me. I will continue to make a mess of the whole goddamn house.
Yeah.
If you don't stop fucking locking me in the closet.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's that simple. And to think that the peaceful protest works at all is unrealistic. It's an unrealistic concept.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with rioting. I think at the end of the day, you can look back at most cases in history where riots took place and say, well, they were rioting for a good reason and it brought on change. If they hadn't have rioted, it wouldn't have been listened to. I think that's something, we're living through that. We're living through the part that sucks because we're seeing the damage. We're seeing how it hurts people. We're there to see how these business owners can cry to a reporter and tell them that this is their life work and they saved up this is their grandpa's shop. And you can hate and vilify the rioters. But if they didn't riot, you'd hate them anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
So-
they'd be vilified for different reasons.
So I was gonna say, I guess the question, instead of like, why do you think people in the protest, it would be more of like, why did people hijack the protests? As I think is the better way to word that question, because it doesn't place blame on any one particular group. There's a multitude of different people that cause these to happen.
Well, everyone's got
Before-
different motives in that case,
Well, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But before the whole thing, I can say I totally understand the whole. I've been shafted. There's nothing I can do besides make a statement, and the only statement I have is this: I've basically been shafted for the last 2.5 years of my naval career, pretty much every day. And so there have been plenty of times in which I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go do a thing. They can't stop me. No matter, like, they just can't do anything. And I absolutely understand where that comes from just because of what I personally am going through as of this time.
Right. That's 2 years of people treating you a little shitty.
Yeah.
Like
That's
this
2 years
extrapolated
compared to-
onto
That's 2 years compared to your entire life. And I
entire
understand,
life. Races
I understand
of people.
that
Your
2
grandfather
years.
kept getting fucked on by people. Like
Yeah.
you just get your whole life story over and over of how people will fuck you, your family, your friends, everyone that you know.
Like I said, I
Of
understand.
course,
the
you're going to be a little
concept.
fucking
So it's
frustrated
like,
and hateful. Yeah, like
I understand the concept. I have no idea what the whole story is. I have no idea what the overall feeling is. But I know that cathartic feeling of, fuck you, I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
and that's, again, not to say that BLM condones the riots or anything like that. You were about to ask another question, I believe. Sorry.
He asked, basically, sorry, I hijacked that, but
Oh, you're fine.
he asked basically, why do you think people felt the need to hijack the riots or hijack the protests and cause the riots?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was just to like change up the question. That way, we don't seem like we're just trying to place blame on one particular group. Like
Well, everyone's got motives.
Yeah, I don't want to be the guy.
Everyone involved has a motive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In this particular topic, I want to be as unbiased as possible. Because again, I've seen the video footage of breaks and businesses getting broken before the protest even got there. I've seen it to where people showed up itching for a riot, and I've also seen where protest happened and nothing happened. Yeah,
which is the majority of the cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely
those
seems
are the ones you hear about,
right?
Yeah, unfortunately, with the news.
Funny enough, isn't that kind of the point?
With the news, they have to put out the biggest thing, and unfortunately, oh hey, the protests are still happening. Nothing's happened. That's not really catch your eyes, get the view, get the money kind of thing.
How much have you guys seen of it lately?
A problem.
I have barely heard about it. It's all been COVID news.
Exactly.
But it's
I can guarantee. I promise you, because I've looked in people's personal things, people's posts. There's still meetings. There's still protests.
Yeah.
I was on the street the other day. I was just driving on the street, and there was a BLM protest going on. I was like, oh fuck! There's a whole protest going on. I hadn't heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't, probably, because it's not news anymore.
Yeah.
Riots are news.
Exactly.
Peaceful protests aren't news. You're not going to see, and I'm not trying to say you won't see change for peaceful protests, because that's not entirely true.
We're not going to see
riots
change
get
in an
attention.
expedited fashion.
Yeah. I would love to see us build a societal government, and kind of going back to how the Constitution, because I'm a huge constitutionalist. I would love to see it to where we could form a group, a protest. We can go to peacefully assemble on the lawn of Congress and actually get change done. I would love to see that happen. And unfortunately, I think that there might be a couple violent riots here and there. That's just going to be kind of the growing pains. Do I agree with any of the violent riots? No. But is it kind of a symptom of everything that's been going on? Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard for me to hate the riots. I obviously don't support violence to people or even necessarily property, but fuck you. If it's got to be something, I would rather have violence to property than ongoing violence to people.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, kind of backtracking, but also going off on a little bit of a side note. The last thing we have for this topic is actually the overall mental health of society in America and what everything's been doing, be that COVID, be that the protests, be that anything like that. Why do you think that there has been such a downfall in terms of the mental health of the citizens over the last 5-10 years?
People are pulling their heads out of their asses, but with lack of sugarcoating, but people have better. Our social media used to be like MySpace and what's on the news, and before that, it was what you saw on the TV shows and radio. It was selected. It was whatever needed to happen for whatever people were in charge of those things. Mm-hmm. Now we have people to people talking. You just have TikTok. I saw most of the riots on TikTok before I saw them on the news. And I saw the same footage on the news 2 days later about an event that was chopped up to look incriminating to one side or the other, whereas the actual events were more blurry and gray, but it's all clear. It's so obvious now that the news is trying to fuck you over. It's trying to control what you think. It's serving a narrative. We have the ability now to piece all these little bits together that come out on the internet from people, because everyone has a fucking way to record something now.
Mm-hmm.
We have ways of getting what actually happened at the scene, and we're seeing it finally. We're as a country piecing it together. And I would disagree that I don't think that the mental state of the country is diminishing. I think that people are being inspired and they're getting angry, and anger is a healthy emotion. Anger is good.
I agree. I agree that anger is a healthy emotion. I myself personally am unhealthily filled with it, I will admit. But
we all have our vices. We all have them.
My vice just so happens to be punching things. But while anger is a thing, it's also the anxiety, the depression, the active cases of bipolar, schizophrenia, all of these things that are seemingly amping up. And I agree with you. I absolutely agree that these things very well might be / are happening because the country as a whole and these last 2 to 3 generations are collectively pulling our heads out of our asses and looking at these computers we have in our hands. We have computers in our hands which we can talk to other people, which we can go in and we can look at both sides. We can find the original source material and we can decide for ourselves, which is something that couldn't happen 15 years ago.
I threw mine that way because it buzzed and I didn't want it buzzing on the desk. So it got yoked, but yeah.
I had 2 things specifically to talk about. One, and most importantly, being that source of media, this our way of communicating, has already come under legislative attack in the past and will certainly come under legislative attack in the future.
Mm-hmm.
If not blatantly, then at least undercover as
subversively taking away our ability to think for ourselves.
Yes, and that's what you get. A dumb population's an easily controllable one. This isn't.
Yeah,
I think we're all well past the point of people sounding like they're crazy when they say things like that. When people drop an anti-government thing, people are beyond sounding crazy. They are at the point of, hey, this is just kind of known. Everyone knows. Yeah. I could talk to about goddamn anyone and say like, hey, the government can access damn near all of your information. And if they wanted to basically make you disappear without rights. And they'd be like, yeah, but I don't do much that's bad. Like that should set off a tick for you like, fuck, that is so not okay. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
What kind of crazy post-apocalyptic bullshit is that? It's just where we're at, and everyone's cool with it because it's normal.
Yeah, I'm going to go off the cuff a little bit here, and I'm just going to say, yes, I technically work for the government. I am on my way out of that position, and these are my opinions and not those of the military and of the government. It's a thing I have to say.
But it's going to get posted all over every single one of our videos. It's
exactly.
Be great.
Like, we have to say it. But personally, the government is one of the scariest motherfucking things in existence right now. Like, the government as a whole. I'm not saying any one particular person. I'm saying their ability to do it. And I would technically be flagged as a conspiracy theorist because while I joke about it, I do believe that there is a Big Brother thing going on. Whether it be the birds working for the bourgeoisie or it be something else going on.
Right.
I don't know. All I know is I personally have a reason to not trust Siri. Just due to what's happened to me.
Even Facebook has sold your information. Like,
yeah.
Everything is gathering information and selling it.
Yeah.
Like the story where a 16-year-old girl was getting ads from Target for baby diapers. Her father found it, tried to sue Target, and then it turned out that his 16-year-old daughter was pregnant. And the reason they were marketing it towards her was because she was going up and specifically searching subversive things that pregnant women buy.
Yeah, that's targeted ads and whatnot.
Targeted ads are like legitimately just tiny, tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
If the corporations can do it, what can the fucking government do?
This is entirely fair. And just so you guys know, I'm not like an anti-government entirely person, but there's a lot of shit that needs fixing just on the civ side. Simply on the civ side of like, hey man, these laws
I absolutely agree with you on that
part. Generically fucked.
Again, I'm a right-leaning libertarian. I believe in small government to the max.
Same. The government's, in my opinion, too big. I also am right-leaning libertarian. I'm slightly more right-leaning or less right-leaning. I can't remember exactly what it is that he is. But I agree with him in terms of the Constitution. I believe that we should have the right, everyone should have the right to bear arms. I believe that everyone should have the right to say, I'm not saying a damn word in trial. I believe that people should have the right to hold protests on the White House lawn.
I mean, there would always be protests on the White House lawn if that were the case, but
That's fair. But like,
have you seen Futurama?
but yeah, I actually think that's a good wrapping up place because that was the last question we had.
Yeah. That was, yeah.
That was a good conversation.
It's a bigger one.
I don't normally like the heavier conversations, but I do find that they are conversations that more or less need to happen, and that more people should be talking about. And I feel like we could be discussing more civilized than currently what's going on, especially because, you know, with TikTok, you go into TikTok and it's just, you know, Democrats calling the Republicans all sorts of names, and the Republicans calling the Democrats all sorts of names, and like, oh, if you vote for this person, you're an asshole. If you vote for this person, you're an asshole. And I don't like that, because that
they're
doesn't
really not even different enough to be so opposed.
Exactly.
Oh, I've had
what blows my mind is the fact that they say they're arguing for the same thing. Meanwhile, they're arguing for completely different things. Like, they say equality, one person's meaning equity, one person's meaning like
legal equality, like
legal
under the law,
equal opportunity,
under the law, like an equal opportunity versus equity, and neither of them are actually talking about equality.
Yeah,
but they're putting it under the moniker equality.
That's how it is. It's all about sounding the most virtuous to the people who are already on your side anyway. No one's convincing anyone new. Let's be real. No one's convincing anybody new along the way. It's not like you've switched sides 7 or 8 times. Like, you're like, well, this is a thing that I pretty much figured out, and I've been here for a while.
Yeah. Especially with what we talked about with the mental health of the country, everyone collectively pulling their head out of their ass and not necessarily just listening to one side.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. But with that, Minnow?
Yeah, that being said, we have loved having everyone here watching, discussing in the comments, calling all of us idiots for talking about the things we talked about, or agreeing with everything we said. We're here for civilized conversation, as I've always stated. I don't care what your beliefs are. You can completely disagree with me as long as you're willing to have a civil discourse with us. So, again, thank you, Kanoa, for being with us again.
Pleasure.
He will be here one last time for one last segment, and we will catch you guys on the flip. So please remember to be civilized.
And of course, this was Discourse. Take it easy, guys.
Man, that was... If you're over the age of 21, I would recommend having one of these afterwards. That was fantastic. We greatly appreciate having Kanoa on, especially with that conversation we just had. That was heavy, but like I said in the video, we really understand that these are heavy topics. I feel like we should be talking about them, but in a more civilized manner than what we've been seeing. That being said, thank you guys for coming in, watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share. Have discourse down in the comments below. We greatly appreciate every single one. And I know we're small right now, but hey, that's okay, because we'll grow. That being said, like I said, feel free to comment and have discourse down in the comments, and join up in the Discord, where we have all sorts of topics, whether it's religion, politics, economics, anything. Click over there to my right, I believe is where I have it, or on my face. I'm not really sure. Wherever I put it. Find other more content. It's not always going to be this heavy, but feel free to click on that. Click below to subscribe, right, more than likely right there on my mouth. And that being said, have a good one.